This show is absolutely remarkable with its character writing, as every character is so much more than what initially meets the eye. Really, in terms of either kind of occurring side characters or main characters, the only one who's been a good person through and through since the beginning is our boy Bojji. There's always been a questionable aspect about everyone, some more than others. But from Miranjo seemingly having a trapped little girl begging for forgiveness, kind of trapped with Daida, to seeing the brutality that happened on the outside, to seeing King Desha just really surprised me in this episode, because we got one hell of a backstory of what happened with Gigan and what turned him into a criminal. And when I saw what was happening with what I was like, these guys don't seem like an army, they seem like bandits, they seem like mercenaries. And when you get the reveal that they actually are, and how he didn't enjoy doing what he did at all, but in order to keep morale up and in order to basically overthrow a very corrupt father, he had to take his, toxic things into his own hands in order for the betterment of the world as a whole. And just seeing that level of detail while also finally getting some clarification on what happened with Bojji's mother. And I think one of my favorite details from what seems to be implied, because if we rewind a month or two back, when Daida was seeing the little girl Miranjo who was being bullied by civilians, those civilians, seemingly after this episode, seem to be King Bose's people, who she feels bullied by because she was killed by after basically launching an arsenal of arrows at Bojji's mother, and had she not been killed there, or at the very least sniped there, because seemingly she's trapped in a magic mirror of some sort, so maybe she put her personality in like a magical object, but looks like her physical body got killed there, and had she not, it very well could be Bojji would have died at the beginning of or even before the show kicked off, which is insane to think about. But it's very interesting to see just how good of a mother Bojji's mom was, that rather than trying to flee or fight, she knew one thing and one thing only: protect my baby boy, and she, even in her death, protected her baby boy. And it was very sad to see, but it definitely raises more questions about, is the little girl that Daida was talking to, is she an innocent girl in all this, or is that just a persona that she wants to not take the blame or things like that? Because as we know, King Bose and her, they have a relationship of some sort. They very much care for each other, but it feels like there's definitely a lot of questions that have still yet to be answered. But damn, what a way to basically kick it all off and finally reveal one of the biggest questions I've personally had in this show, and I know many people who are fans of this had as well. But the star is, without a doubt, the battle that didn't happen, I think, because we know Bojji is very strong now, and even though I felt like he could put up a fight against the King of the Underworld, I also was questioning how good of a fight could he put up. And the fact that you have Despa of all characters kind of like radio in after, because he's smart, right? He realizes, like, is this kid actually bullshitting me? Is he a weakling? Or is he someone that if I actually was to fight and beat, I wouldn't have the energy to kill the king? And the fact that he's basically saying, you're not gonna like this, but you're no match for Bojji, and honestly, you're no match for King Bose as well, because he should have been number one. For some reason, he never went that extra mile. And the fact that you also want to take over the kingdom, that ain't gonna work. So instead, why don't you do the smart thing? Have Bojji versus his father, and then in the middle of the chaos, kill Miranjo. And I'm like, that's not a bad idea, even though I don't want to see Bojji get hurt, and I also don't think the king would fully kill his son. He seemingly wants to get out of the deal with the devil he made. At the same time, they would both put up a damn good fight, and that would be interesting, because essentially you would have Daida's body versus Bojji, but Daida's body would have the king's full power, and that would be insane, because as we know, back, it was like, honestly, 2 months ago or something, when the king asked who's the most powerful of them all, the thing that the mirror showed was Bojji himself. So, very much so, it doesn't seem like many people could beat Bojji, but at the same time, it doesn't mean many characters couldn't put up a fight, though seeing him stomp a lightning blast of death was definitely very, very welcomed in my opinion. But I think one of the best pieces of writing across all 16 episodes has to be the inability to forgive or forget as of yet for Bojji when it comes to Domas, because that type of betrayal is something that is going to haunt him for potentially years to come. He might never forgive him. But I love the idea that for someone like Kage, he wants Bojji not to be trapped in rage and hate, because he knows what that does to people. So he's saying, hey, like, obviously you care about the guy, he made a mistake, but you want to forgive him, right? And then immediately when Bojji thinks about the past, thinks of the good times, and remembers he did genuinely care for Bojji, but that level of betrayal, how could he have someone like that by his side as he runs off? And Kage immediately goes like, of course he can never, forgive you fools. You think forgiveness is enough? And I love that rather than having it be Damas being like, see, I'm crying, see, I'm begging for forgiveness. He literally tried to kill himself in the face of Bojji. He knows he was a piece of shit to Bojji, but the fact of the matter is, he doesn't deserve Bojji's forgiveness unless Bojji decides to give it to him. So what he can do is he can continue with his mission, and even though he feels so bad that Hokuro's kind of like being claimed as a traitor as well, they both know what they need to do, and they're just so happy to see the once frail boy who had no friends, was looked down upon, now can scare the king of the underworld into retreating. Like, that's what I love about it, from Queen Hilling's reaction to seeing how strong Bojji is, to seeing those two. It's just so nice to see how far the character writing has come, that characters will piss you off, characters will make you so upset and want to rip your hair out, but at the end of the day, they are written so realistically for their setting, and really, other than Bojji, everyone's made some questionable decisions along the way. Kage, the best friend of Bojji, literally started out by manipulating him and bullying him and stealing from him, and look at how far they've come. That's why I think unless Damas takes a blade for Bojji and ends up dying, which if that does happen, I think that would be the forgiveness scene, I do think there's a chance Bojji might end up forgiving Damas down the line, but I'm glad that it wasn't just this episode, that it's going to take him a while, and it's going to take him an act to see something that, to really show that he has changed, and he's not going to be that same type of person who would push a frail boy into a smoldering volcano. I mean, I've said it ever since it basically started off, like, this is one of the best anime I've seen, and really at this point, I don't think anything is quite going to compare to Ranking of Kings for me in some time, because the way the characters are being explored is really unlike anything you typically see in anime, because this is the type of stuff that, I'm not saying like light novels and books don't have, but often with anime, they kind of streamline it, right? They kind of take away a lot of the meat and substance, the internal thoughts, because you can't just have characters standing around talking the same way you can in a book. But seeing how all the characters get a chance to shine, from Kings of the Underworld to Bojji's father, to the smaller characters as well, it feels like there's always a mystery while constantly revealing motivations behind these characters' actions that make you come out saying, this isn't an anime gimmick, this isn't an anime trait, this isn't the evil stepmother, this isn't the evil ogre. Like, everything about it just feels so well written, and that's why I love seeing what actually led Gigan to be a criminal. He wasn't some horrible mass murderer. He literally was fighting on a side that he didn't believe in, and when seeing a little child of his species strung up there and his people burning alive, he killed the monsters behind it. And to see that Gigan, for all these years, was always supposed to be one of, was supposed to be in the order of the underworld. And the fact that the king could make amends in his own ways by bringing him to that order rather than just killing and locking him away, that act of forgiveness that he always wanted to give is so interesting as they set up a brutal cliffhanger with Okin. And yeah, it'll be interesting to see what happens next, because that looks way worse than it did when they initially fought him. But thoughts and feelings on this week's episode of Ranking of Kings, easily one of the best episodes as per usual, but thoughts, if you have any, leave a like if you enjoyed and subscribe if you're new around here. So until next time, everyone, please take care and have a good one.